Good morning and welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Tuesday, the 23rd day of Adar Bays, the second Adar. Let's begin with Tzedakah. Adela, Tzedakah, Shemekarev is a Segeula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. So we continue in chapter 38. And the Alter Rebbe spoke about the difference between davening, praying, doing mitzvahs, with kavana or without kavana. And if you remember, we went back and forth. The most important thing is to do it, because the bottom line, we need to bring godliness into this physical world. And yet, Alter Rebbe quotes what our sages say, that mitzvah, tefillah, beloi kavana, kaguf, beloi neshama. That prayer without kavana, if you don't have the proper intent, the feelings, it's like a body without a soul. And which means that obviously the soul, both of them have, the body and the soul have their independent sustenance from God. You can have a person without a soul, a dead person, the body still exists. But yet, obviously, the type of energy, the type of godly energy in the body is not to compare to the godly energy within the soul. Now we have to understand, first of all, what kind of soul are we talking about? We are not talking about the soul, the godly soul, the spiritual soul, the soul that connects us to Hashem. That's a whole different thing. Here we're talking about the soul that keeps us alive, which we call it the animal soul, the vivifying soul. And yet we're talking, so the Alter Rebbe says that this is the godly energy in the soul is certainly a greater level than it is in the body. And the same thing is also with the prayer. When you pray, just saying the words is like the body. You're praying with kavana is like you have the soul in it. The Alter Rebbe goes on to further elaborate on this concept. And he says that we have to understand that the body and soul, the godly revelation is equal in the body and the soul. The difference is in the quantity. How much godliness is it? What does it mean? So to use an analogy of the sunlight. When the sun comes in, shines into the room. Let's say you have a wall that blocks the sun. And then in the wall you have a window. And through the window, the sun comes in. So is it the same type of sun that comes in when there is no wall? Yes, it is the same. It is just condensed to a smaller quantity of sunlight that comes in the window. But if you take a curtain, let's say a very thick curtain, and you put over the window, and you block the sunlight, still there is some sunlight that comes through the curtain. Now this sunlight that comes through the curtain is a different quality of light. It's not the same light. It's a more dim light. It's a different type of light. This is called Hester, the concealment. The small hole in the wall is called contraction, reducing the quantity. So if you have a big window, it's a smaller contraction. If you have a small window, it's a bigger contraction. You reduce it to much more. Says the Alter Rebbe, when we are talking about the quality of the godly light that is in this world, in the body or in the soul, and again we're talking about the physical soul, the vivifying soul, that's all the same. The quality of the light is all the same. Godliness is concealed. Godliness is concealed means that in this world, everything is not felt godliness. Any entity in this world does not feel that it's nullified within its creator. In the higher spiritual world, the concealment is less, and they feel more that they're part of the creator. But here in this physical world, whether it's a body or it's a soul, a spiritual soul, meaning I'm talking about the physical soul, the vivifying soul, it all feels the same. Independent existence. There is a difference in the quantity of light, whether there is more contraction of this light that comes to this world, which it comes through an intermediary, which we'll soon talk about, that is called the klipas noiga, the shell that conceals. And from that shell that conceals, it comes down to this physical world, and some of it comes in a greater level of greater amount of this light, and other elements receive less. You cannot compare the life that a human being has to the life of a rock. It's certainly a different type of life, but a different level, different amount. The quantity of life is different. But as far as godly concealment, they're all concealed equally. So this is what the Alter Rebbe goes on to say now. Let's see it inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, Ve'af shebishneim oir echad shove bebchinas ester panim. True, in terms of concealment of countenance, meaning the degree to which the countenance, the inner aspect of the divine life force, is concealed. The light, meaning the divine creative life force, is the same in both body and soul. It is concealed equally in both. And again, we're talking about the soul that gives us life, not the spiritual godly soul. The spiritual godly soul, there, godliness is revealed. All it wants, all it senses is God. But in this animal soul, the body and the soul have equally a concealment of the godly light. The garments in which the light hides, conceals, and clothes itself are identical in body and soul. And why is that? For both body and soul are of this world, where throughout the world and all its creatures, spiritual as well as physical, the light, the life force issuing from the breath of God's mouth are equally concealed, as we learned in other part of Tanya. We're going to learn it later on in Shar Yichud V'Amud, the next part of Tanya, that everything that is created, it is created, so to speak, through Hashem's speech, the 10 utterances. So it's all concealed. B'bchinas ester panim, by concealment of countenance. V'yiridas hamadregas beishtalshelos ha'olemus mimadrega lemadrega b'tzimtzumim rabim v'atzumim. And by the descent of the life force from level to level by means of numerous powerful tzimtzumim, contractions, through the various levels constituting the chain-like succession of worlds. So in the higher worlds, godliness is less concealed, and godliness is felt. the existence, the beings, the souls or the angels, whatever is there in the higher worlds, they feel more nullification to God because godliness is less concealed. As it goes further down, it becomes more and more concealed. Ultimately, in this physical world, godliness is so concealed that you can have entities that feel themselves as totally separate entities. And how does it come about? By clothing the godly energy in the shell, which is called the klipas noiga, which is the neutral shell, the intermediary, so to speak, between holiness and not holiness. Finally clothing itself in klipas noiga in order to give life to the totality of this material world. And that is the source for both permissible things and forbidden things. Everything comes from this klipas noiga, this neutral shell. Just like a shell of a fruit covers the fruit, you don't see the fruit, you see the shell. The shell covers the godliness. דהיינו כל דברים המותרים והתוארים שבעולם הזה. וממנו ועל יד המושפעים דברים הטמאים, כי יבחינו ממוצץ כנזכר לעיל. This means, the one, all things of this world that are permitted and pure, which receive their vitality directly via klipas noiga, and from and through klipas noiga evolve the all impure, the forbidden things, which derive their vitality from the three impure klipas. Yet their vitality too stems from noiga, since it is the intermediary level between holiness, where all life originates, and the three impure klipas as mentioned above. Because the non-holy entities do not have a life source for themselves. Their source comes from holiness through the klipas noiga, through the intermediary. So that's what it says. As far as the godly concealment in this physical world, everything is equally concealed. The difference between the body and soul is not in concealment, whether it's concealed or not, because they're both equally concealed. They don't sense that they're nullified to God. The difference is in the quantity of life that each thing receives. The soul certainly receives a greater level of light, a more quantity of light, so to use this, a greater level, a greater quantity of life receives, just like in the brain. There's much more life from the soul than is in the nail or a hair. That's what it says. אבל אף על פי כן האור שימשוך אז החייס אשר השם מאיר ומחיה דרך לבוש זה אינו שווה בכולן מבחינת צמצום והספשטוס. Nevertheless, the godly illumination, meaning the flow of vitality by which God illumines and gives life to all the creatures of this world by way of this garment, which is the klipas noiga, the intermediary shell, as we spoke before. This is not the same for them all. And the difference between the life force of the various creatures is in terms of contraction and expansion. In some creatures, the life force is constricted and limited, while in others, it finds broader expressions. And this the Alter Rebbe will go to explain further, as we will continue tomorrow, that this is the difference between doing the mitzvah with kavana or without kavana. With kavana, it receives a much greater godly revelation than the mitzvahs without kavanah, and that we will continue tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem. Have a wonderful day.